Hi, everyone, and welcome to this FIR interview. I'm Neville Hobson in the UK.
And I'm Shel Holtz in Concord, California, and we have a very special guest with us today. Steve Rubel is joining us. Steve is one of our more regular guests on FI interviews, having appeared, as we count it, 5 times, the last one in 2013. So it has been a while. Welcome, Steve. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be part of the Five Timers Club.
It is. The jacket's in the mail.
So it's an SNL reference for those who don't know me.
Yeah. I asked ChatGPT to tell me about you, Steve. Just curious to see how accurate it would be and where it would focus. So I'm going to read these 3 paragraphs, and you can let us know how ChatGPT did on this. It says, Steve Rubel is a prominent public relations executive and professional blogger known for his expertise in media trends, digital culture, and content strategy. He has held significant roles at Edelman, the world's largest public relations firm, including serving as chief content strategist. In this capacity, Rubel has been responsible for advancing Edelman's thinking on the evolving media ecosystem and helping clients develop innovative programs that blend paid, owned, and earned media. Throughout his career, Rubel has been a thought leader on the future of media consumption, advising clients such as Adobe, Starbucks, Samsung, and GE. He has emphasized the importance of companies operating in real time, like media organizations, leveraging technology to create compelling content and synchronize communications across various channels. In recent years, Rubel has focused on the potential of analytics and artificial intelligence to uncover hidden patterns within the media landscape. He believes that these insights can benefit communications professionals, the organizations they represent, and the press. By analyzing untapped data, companies can craft more compelling and mediagenic narrative platforms, develop content strategies, and establish thought leadership. So, Steve, how'd ChatGPT do?
Amazingly accurate, maybe a little over the top in the flattery. And I would say just the one part that was wrong is says that it was a prolific blogger. I am a prolific blogger. I mean, it's not true anymore. I was for many years, but not recently. But certainly at one time I was.
Media Persuasion was a very influential blog in its day.
Micro Persuasion, and then later for Ad Age and so forth. Yeah,
that was the start of things back in those early days, 2005, 2004. Yeah. So in December, you wrote a post that really caught my eye, like, whoa, on LinkedIn, announcing that you were leaving Edelman and that you've been there nearly 19 years. And you've received, I left a comment, I know you did as well, Shel, but you've had like 200, nearly 300 comments from people on that post. It's quite extraordinary. Outpouring of well-being, I think, and warmth all around. So that's 2 months ago, and here we are having this conversation. I'm just curious, as Shel is, we both are really, what's your journey now? And leaving after 19 years, how was that? So, what's happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, put a flag here that it was a remarkable privilege to work for such a quality organization for almost 20 years. And so I have nothing but love and respect for the Edelman family. I was, caught in a reduction in force that they made in the beginning of December. It was just shocking and disappointing, but just, it's a business decision. And so I didn't, I don't in any way take it personally. And like I said, I'm just grateful for every minute that I got to spend there. As you guys may or may not know, I was very vocal and active online for many years. And then about 6-7 years ago, kind of made a deliberate decision to step back and to really, focus much more on Edelman client work and teams. And there was no, there's no story behind that. I just kind of got tired of it and wanted to really do something different. And I'm of the belief that the internet has a short memory. I put that up just to, to have something on the record, just to say that I wasn't there anymore. And I was really blown away just by how people just were responding to that post, but also just the outreach I got. I mean, I had, people contact me from 30 years ago I worked with, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, it was staggering. And from all ways, from LinkedIn, from email, from text messages and so forth. So, and that was something I totally did not expect. at all. I just really I wasn't ready for that. So I took I took some time and I said, okay, look, I'm going to use this time to just catch up with people because that's something I really hadn't done in the last few years. And so I just said, I'm going to book myself silly. I'm going to have 1 to 3 Zooms a day with people just to catch up and see, what they're doing and, to kind of, poke my head above ground and really kind of get a better understanding of the profession and where the profession's at beyond Edelman. Because as great as Edelman is, it's one view. And I really wanted to have a little bit of a broader perspective. So I took the time to do that. And then I took the time to also think about kind of, what I want to do next, which we can talk about. And, and then just to kind of, I had no infrastructure. I mean, just to give you an idea of how wedded I was and planning to stay, with Edelman for the run, I had no CV. My LinkedIn was completely out of date. It was a mishmash of stuff. So I had to take time. To go through the process of just, emotionally and mentally coping with a layoff. And the community was just incredible in helping me do that. And then also just had to kind of start to think about what's next and which we can get into. And so, and it was just, in their case, it was just a business decision and I have nothing but respect for them.
Well, let's talk about this issue that you've embraced, I guess, later in your career at Edelman. And since then, you've been doing more than just holding Zoom sessions, because we know that you did a session for Muckrack on this topic of analytics and AI and their ability to transform the way communications professionals understand and engage with the media landscape. Can you elaborate on that? Because certainly most of the people in PR and communications that I talk to about generative AI are trying to figure out how to write with it.
So this is just absolutely what I'm most excited about today, Shel, is so where I am in my AI journey was that, so ChatGPT launched in November of 22. I didn't sign up at first because I was a little thrown off by the fact that the only way you could sign up was by giving him your cell phone number. And I, it was a little, and they were an unknown company at the time. And so I, by some measures. And so I kind of felt weird about that. And I was like, and I viewed it as a search tool, which I think I honestly, I spent 2 years in Edelman's AI task force working with Edelman's own media team on helping to kind of accelerate their use of AI. And I saw that a lot of people like me used it that way. And, we had in the winter of 23, we had a freezing cold week here in New York. And I got a text message over the weekend from a colleague saying, hey, have you thought about using AI in what you do with analytics? And which I had been already doing for a couple of years at that point. And I said, no, I hadn't thought of that. And so it was freezing. I didn't want to go out. It was like 10 degrees Fahrenheit here or whatever it was. And so I stayed in the whole weekend and just started to try different things. And I was like, wow, this, everyone has one of those moments, I think, who's used one of these tools. But wow, this is such a powerful tool for helping me understand patterns in the media environment. So here's what I do. I pull down massive amounts of metadata out of Muckrack. The Muckrack, full disclosure, I got a license to Muckrack in exchange for some promotional work that I, basically writing on LinkedIn with their content. So just full disclosure on that. But it's not a paid relationship per se. The data though, I've just become a fan. It's just, I've known Greg Gallant for a million years. He's the CEO, but the data is so rich. And I started to pull down the data out of Muckrack, the article data and the metadata, and began to use a whole bunch of different AI tools to analyze it. And what I found was, teams are, earned media remains the bedrock of PR. I mean, PR has and communications, as you both know and have chronicled, has become so much more multifaceted now. It's so much more diversified. It's so many different types of activities, but earned media remains the bedrock of it. I mean, I find, it's often the starting point for a lot of client relationships that extend out in other ways. And, everyone is challenged with trying to break through in this environment because it's just, it's getting, first of all, less reporters, less outlets in some cases, you know, a lot of topics that are just, high volume, drown out the news environment, big rocks, if you will, whether it be Trump or sustainability or DEI or, whatever, pop culture. I mean, there's just so many different things that the media is writing about that often the aperture for clients can be narrow. And that's an evergreen problem. And so I, in the last several years at Edelman and now on my own, as to stay fresh as I explore different opportunities, is I've just seen that you can take that data and you can bring it into AI and manipulate it and really understand patterns, such as to really kind of quantify, for example, what are the themes that a particular writer is writing about, an outlet is writing about, an index of outlets, or around a topic. So you could take a topic like for AI, for example, and pull down thousands of stories, not the full text, but the metadata, and use the AI tools to manipulate that to really understand patterns and then compare different quarters and different periods so you can start to understand where a story is going, or a single reporter to understand where that particular reporter is going. And what I found is not only is that useful for nuts and bolts kind of, brass tacks, earned media applications, but so many companies, want to develop executive visibility programs or thought leadership programs or narratives that are consistent with the media environment and mediagenic. And when you look at that data set and use AI to manipulate that stuff gets to be so powerful, because in theory, it's a triple win. It's a win for your stakeholder, whether that's an internal stakeholder or a client. It's a win for the press because you're creating a better story that's consistent with what they're writing about on the mark, which has long been a complaint of theirs. And it serves you because, you're going to be much more successful. And so I am just so bullish on the use of AI and analytics to understand the media environment at a very granular or a very, wide aperture. And I find that this is completely untapped in the industry right now, completely untapped. And it has the potential, if applied at scale, to be incredibly useful, probably more so on the agency level, but certainly on the corporate level as well.
That's very interesting. It makes me think that the broad topic of AI is featured in every episode of our podcast for at least a year and a half, literally. And new angles are emerging every time we have a conversation. This is the latest one. And I'm reminded, Steve, actually, the interview we did prior to talking to you today with Sylvia Camby a couple of weeks back, that was published last week, she talked about this very topic, finding patterns. She talked about the kind of move from beyond generative AI to what she calls curation AI. And she talks a bit about how AI can provide communicators with better insights, deeper insights, and how messages are received and acted upon. She reckons that communicators who've worked with enterprise social networks like Yammer and so forth back in the day have very transferable skills as a result of that. So it got me I guess the question that arises in my mind, listening to what you're saying, if AI-driven analytics reveal the hidden patterns in media landscape, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for communicators generally? And I'm wondering what they need to shift to kind of get a handle on this is something you absolutely need to pay attention to. And so how do you think this shifts the role of PR pros in shaping narratives?
Hugely. So, I mean, the inspiration for this, started for me during the lockdowns of the pandemic, when my role changed, just the nature of just the way, the travel stopped and so forth. And I've just been, I think you both know that forgive me here for the Europeans, but I'm a huge sports fan, particularly a baseball fan. And without getting too wonky there, I've just been fascinated how analytics have come around and revolutionized any sport, whether it be football, NFL football, soccer, football, baseball, golf, tennis, you name it, have completely revolutionized it because teams or individuals understand the statistics and the analytics about how their opponents behave. The media is not our opponent. But the media is certainly a gatekeeper. And so one of the things that I think is most powerful here, so I just looked at that and said, what do they do that we could be applying in our world? And, one of the things that I think about with the press is that they're really good at writing about analyzing and writing about the problems in a particular, or what I would call the critical issues in a particular field. What are the critical issues around AI? What are the critical issues around DEI? I mean, and those are changing every week, every day. And it may not be, the entire totality of what they write about around that topic. They're writing about the solutions as well. But I find that if you are able to identify and quantify the patterns in the critical issues, what are the problems that they are writing about regularly? And you can position your organization, your solution, your intellectual property as solutions to those particular issues. Or you have a point of view or some way of bringing some more perspective around those issues. And those issues are written about at scale. You're going to be way more successful because you're not, so much of earned media for the 35 years I've been in this business is trial and error. It's knocking on doors. I mean, it's relationships, it's understanding people, but it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of waste. It's necessary waste, but it's waste. How do we reduce that? Well, I mean, that's where if you use the analytics to quantify, and the AI is really useful because it's able to read huge volumes of information and statistically make patterns out of this. And I've mastered the prompts required and the different tools required to do that. But I think that has a transformation in helping us in communications. And even if your output is not media, your output is social media, your output is content for your website or LinkedIn or whatever it is, there's a lot of work done in social listening to understand what people are talking about online. There's a lot of great tools for that are advancing every day. But there's not a lot of work being done to look at what's going on in the, quote unquote, professional content creator community and what working journalists are doing and using that signal set in addition to the others to helping to really shape content strategies. And so I just think that is just absolute, probably one of the biggest opportunities with AI right now for communications professionals. Maybe not the biggest, but one of them for sure.
Steve, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow.
I'm going. I can't wait.
You gave some great examples of how analytics can shape a pitch, for example, to a journalist. I think what a lot of people are going to be inclined to do is what you have recommended, and then the next step would be to have the AI produce the pitch. And there are a lot of people out there who are talking about AI slop. Chris Penn talks about it. Jeff Livingston, Greg Verdino. It's a real prominent topic right now that the internet is being overwhelmed by AI-generated content. How can organizations balance the use of data-driven insights with that need for having a human in the loop? And
Yep.
What are the ethical considerations around leveraging AI and analytics in developing these strategies?
So I don't think there's any ethical concerns about the analytics in helping you form the strategies. It's the ethical concerns are in the content generation after that. I don't think there's any kind of ethical concerns necessarily around using AI to analyze mass quantities of data, unless I'm missing something. But on the pitching side of things, I think you can't let the AI take away your humanity. And look, I mean, sorry, another baseball metaphor, but it still requires, no amount of statistics is going to substitute for talent. And, Aaron Judge has to go up and hit a baseball.
Has to catch one too.
Yeah. Yes. He missed a big one in the World Series, but that's another story. So the talent and the expertise and the humanity is still absolutely necessary. Knowing journalists, having relationships, building those relationships, none of that goes away. So to me, it's you use the analytics, and the insights, which I would, generate for teams, and then they would and with prescriptive advice on what to do with it. I still think you have to write your pitch the same way you always write your pitch. You might take, you might take a line here or there, but I really wouldn't recommend that. I think the way to do it is to write your pitch in your own voice, the way you've always have done it, because it's worked for a long time in some cases, whether it's 5 years or 20 years or whatever it is. even if you're new to this, and it's a year, it's your own humanity, and building those relationships is still absolutely necessary. But then I think, taking the pitch and bringing it into an AI tool, whether that be Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT, or I've actually been using the writing tools built into the Apple Intelligence writing tools that are built into the iOS and the Mac, not for pitches, but just for emails I'm writing and so forth, and just having it clean up, strengthen it. One of the things I like to do, for example, is to use the AI to improve the subject lines, because I will bring in the pitch, I would recommend to teams that they bring in the pitch into an AI tool and ask it, based on email marketing best practices, how would you tailor my subject line, which I've already provided, to make it stronger, right? And look, you might look at that and you're going to say, it's too much written like an e-commerce email, but you might pick up a trick or two that, maybe there's a word ordering, where you move one word up so it's a little bit earlier in the preview, or some sort of optimization that augments what you do. So I think the use of AI to augment, to take your work from a 5 or a 6 to a 7 or an 8, which I did, with the analytics 3 years ago, definitely took my work, not to a 10, but certainly took it, from a 6 to an 8. And, the same thing applies. And I think that to me is the opportunity with teaching teams how to do that. And to do that. I think you can, depending on the size of your organization, you could do that at a corporate or team level, but it works best at an individual level where you sit down with 1 or 2 or 3 people. And I did this, at Edelman, and say, what do you do all day? And to then provide expertise and advice on how to use the AI to augment that work to make it even stronger.
It's interesting. I think we talked recently, Shel and I, in I think our monthly episode, the last one we did, the long form monthly one, about the evolution of generative AI within the profession, in the PR profession, where surveys are showing that take up and use is in the 70 plus, 80 plus %. The days are gone, I think, when we saw a couple of years back a survey where a quarter of those surveyed said they would never, ever, under any circumstances, use artificial intelligence to PR work. Now, that's vanished, thankfully. Common sense has really prevailed, but people have, I think, acquired a better understanding of some of these tools. And what you've explained there, what you mentioned there, Steve, is something that I see happening. I do it myself. AI like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, all the ones that we know of, are great at research. So I tend to regard them as my research assistants, the same for search as well. Providing the skill, if you will, to trawl through and make sense of huge amounts of data, structured and unstructured, doesn't matter, and present you the results. Your job is still to make sure it's accurate. And that's a whole different, I think, conversation that we probably still need to have, because I see this coming up a lot in conversations I have with people, that you can get all this input and great, you write your report. No, you've got to sift it. You've got to understand it yourself. So in the context of this latest idea of revealing hidden patterns in the media landscape, etc., do you think, AI, the tools are now detecting trends directly themselves, and with limited prompting? No, you don't have to write a lengthy script to tell it what you want it to do for you. And predicting news cycles. What do you think about the effect on companies? What rethinking do organizations, including our profession, if you like, the approach to media relations, and indeed the whole notion of concept of thought leadership? What changes need to be front of mind there?
So first of all, I think that some of the uptake, what people may not appreciate, is that some of the uptake, the reason why it's jumped so much has been the acceleration of enterprise-ready tools, whether it be ChatGPT Enterprise or Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini for Workspace or Claude having an enterprise-ready tool. So I think the enterprise, some of the concerns in the beginning were because the technology was nascent, but some of it also was because the tools weren't really necessarily there to protect corporate information, in the beginning, and there was a lot of concern about that. So I think some of that, each day that goes away, and there's more and more adoption of those tools, and so I think that's part of what drove some of the uptake. In terms of So I guess you're asking more about workflow, Neville, and like how do you, what does this mean for, for corporations overall?
Yeah, I would say, because some of it can seem a little esoteric, I think, at times when we talk about patterns in data, and the average
Yeah.
communicator is looking at a report they got to do, or the pitch they got to prepare, or the workflow on their desk right now. How would this impact them, and what do they need to do it?
So I think the most important thing is that when people first start using these tools, that there's a hope that they can just be the oracle of everything, and go in and help me identify the 20 most important people who are writing about AI, in public relations. Help me understand I always tell people that the AI tools will always give you an answer. They won't say, I don't know. Right? They don't. If you try to get them to say they don't know, sometimes that's a fun exercise. They often will not say that they don't know. They are programmed to give you an answer, and that's extremely enchanting and also extremely deceiving. When I find where it works best is when you take something that you have, either something that you have collected on your own, in my case it's data, or something that you have already, an inventory of, whether it be PDFs or speeches from an executive or content from a website, or, a whole bunch of, it could be a large corpus of text, or it could be something small, or it could be, a pitch, a press release, a short-term piece of content that you're going to be creating. And when you bring that information into the AI tools and ask it to improve it, and ask for prompts, and ask it to, get you to think of things that maybe you haven't thought of asking. I think that's a really important, thing, is to really not just go in with your own, arrived ideas on what you want to get out of it, but to be a little bit more open-ended and to bring it in and say, what could you tell me about this? How can I improve this? And right now, today, that's all in the prompts, right? It's just getting, which I'm sure you guys have talked about all the time, is getting the prompts right. In the future, that won't be the case. In I don't know how long exactly, but whether it's a year or 2 years or whatever it is, especially through through agentic AI and things of that nature, it's going to start to understand and personalize those requests for you and bring that to you. So I find that for the most part, the AI tools are best when you bring in your own, when you bring in your lunch, so to speak. There are a couple of exceptions. I have been extremely impressed, and I'm going to write about this on LinkedIn, with Google's deep research. I think it's called Deep Research tool, which has the same name as what ChatGPT just launched a couple of weeks ago, which I'm not paying for the pro version yet, so I'm not forking over $200 a month yet. But I have the plus version, but I'll wait for that to come out. But as I go out and I've been, no secret, I've been actively interviewing with agencies. And we could talk about the agency business. I have been using Google Deep Research to prepare for interviews. And so I will say I am interviewing with such and such company because, I have to be honest, I haven't really talked to other agencies for many years. And I mean, and I'm going in and I'm meeting with, the CEO of this agency or CEO of that agency, write a 3,000 word report for me or whatever it is that helps me understand that agency's priorities, their business, their culture, what the CEOs have been talking about. And I found that stuff is extraordinarily useful, and it's worth the 10 or $20. I think I got some kind of deal that I'm paying for Google Gemini Advanced to do that. And so I think there are situations like that where it can act as the oracle, where you go in and you ask an open-ended question and you get back research with a lot of links, so you can go verify everything, and there's less risk of hallucinations. That's one aspect of it. But the whole other aspect of it is bringing in your existing assets, ideally in an enterprise protected environment. If you're in an organization of any size, even if you're not in a small size firm too, you probably want to do that too, and begin to ask that questions and improvements on that piece of content. That's where I think the power right now is today, for the most part.
Right. Well, Steve, it's great having you with us. You may recall from your 5 previous appearances here that we always ask the same final question, which is, what question didn't we ask that you wish we had?
Well, I don't know if this is really more too wonky for you guys, but I think that just the nature of the agency business right now, and where that's at, and so and I'm not sure how much you cover that, but there's four major holding companies, and two of them are larging. Two of them, the largest ones, are merging, later this year, and so there's going to be three holding companies. And so it's going to be WPP, it's going to be Omnicom, and Publicis. And and then you have Edelman, which is a large independent and the largest. And then you have a whole array of smaller and mid-sized firms. And there's questions overall about AI's impact on the agency business. There's a business model that is largely, yes, it's retainer in some cases, but it's built around billable hours. Yes, those retainers are calculating against billable hours. And this is not just in public relations. It's going to be very important on the advertising side as well, on the media buying side and so forth. It's going to be highly disruptive. AI is going to be highly disruptive. So I would say that I am extremely bullish, though, about the future of the agencies, because I think there's still a absolute need for shared expertise, whether it be, I just saw the abundance of resources that Edelman had on any topic. I could find, anybody, in the network who knew something about the most esoteric thing, they were there. And even in a mid-sized firm, the same thing, you get that benefit. And a small firm too, because they tend to specialize. So I think that the agency business is going to go through some serious disruptions with AI. The business model is going to have to change. But the opportunity to train and develop people and young people, to me, I'm very excited about that in my next role. And so the things I'm looking at doing are, one is taking this media analytics approach and bringing it somewhere else, and to really build on that with their expertise. Two is to really work as an innovation catalyst and help them really accelerate with their adoption and use of AI, and not just generative, but overall, I would say augmented AI, if you will. And three is just to be a comm strategist. I think that there's never been a greater time and need for that, given the chaos in the world right now, not just in the United States but worldwide. So I think that the future of the agency business is bright, and I'm looking at everything, but I'm excited to be staying and to be coaching and to stay in the agency world.
That's terrific. So I've got a final question.
Sure. We could talk forever, I'm sure.
Yeah. It might seem an odd one, but it kind of hits you in the immediacy for a quick answer, which is, look back over the last 20 years since Micro Persuasion days, since that Business Week cover on blogs.
Oh my goodness.
From there to now, how would you sum up your journey in those 20 years?
Less hair. Does that count? I didn't have a lot of hair then either. How would I sum up my journey in 20 years? Well, I would say I've always been, my whole life. Well, for most of my life, I was always fascinated by two different things. I was fascinated by technology, and I was fascinated by news and journalism. I was a journalism major, and then I became fascinated with public relations and the communications in the early 1990s. And so I've been just those three, the Venn diagram of those three things has just fueled my entire career. And the reason why I ended up in Business Week, which was incredibly fortunate, and certainly catapulted me into an amazing role and introduced me to Richard Edelman and so forth, was because I just saw that, that I was reading blogs by people like Dave Weiner, or Robert Scoble years ago. And I said, or Doc Searles, these are all names that people may not know, but certainly you should read up on them.
We know.
Oh yeah, you guys know that for sure. And I said, this is unbelievable that these writers have their own voice, that they're acting like journalists. They're not journalists. They work for corporations in some cases. And what's going on here? And that scratched an itch. And I just started to mess around. And that led to blogging. And that led to, becoming, pretty well known in my industry at the time. And then, I chased that later on with understanding shifts in the media business and just how sponsored content was coming in and really disrupting stuff. So I was looking at native advertising and also brands becoming content creators, and said, okay, what does that mean? And that scratched an itch to just know more and more and more about that. And then now it's AI, right? And analytics. And look, I didn't touch Excel for the first 30 years of my career. And I, 3 years ago, I sat by the pool and I read a book on how, and so I'm 55 years old. And so yes, it's those three things. But if I had to sum it up, is I have an insatiable curiosity. I am always trying to learn. I'm always nervous about what I don't know. And I'm not expecting anybody to teach me. I'm expecting for me to just learn as much as I can through reading. And so I am constantly reading and trying new things just to stay at the edge of the trends and what's happening and to anticipate what's next. And so I think that those skills, which I think anybody can do, have allowed me to really be good at understanding what I think is going to be next and what might just be a fad.
Sounds like great advice for anybody in this industry, Steve.
It absolutely is critical today. Yes.
For listeners who would like to read your writing and be in touch, how can they find you?
So I'm going to be doing more. I got time, and at least for the moment, until I get scooped up. Hopefully, I am going to be active on one and only one channel. That's LinkedIn, and I might do some stuff on Blue Sky. You can follow me there. I haven't posted anything yet. I've engaged a couple of people on some sports stuff, but that's it. And but I would say right now you can follow me on LinkedIn, and I will be. I'm going to be doing different analyses there, using the muckrack data. I'm going to be sharing tips and techniques on how to be more effective as a communicator and staying ahead of these technologies. And I'm open to ideas. And so I just see the power of that channel. I took it for granted. And I think that's where I'm going to be doing things. So you can just, it's linkedin.com/en/Steve Rubel.
Great. Well, Steve, thanks very much for your time. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.